Retiring overseas can absolutely save a broke American, or it can destroy you faster than staying in the US. I'm not here to trash any country. I'm here to show you the 7 traps that quietly wreck broke American retirees overseas, no matter where they go. If you're living mostly on Social Security, if US prices have made retirement feel impossible, if you've been watching those YouTube videos showing paradise beaches and $500 a month apartments, and you're feeling equal parts hope and terror, this video is for you. By the end, you'll know the 7 traps to avoid, and I'll point you to a couple of videos that show you where this can actually work in real life. Let's get into it. Number 1, visa and legal assumptions. The first trap that destroys broke American retirees overseas is making dangerous assumptions about visas and legal status. And I'm telling you right now, this one catches more people than you'd think, because it seems so simple until it isn't. Here's what happens. Someone watches a few YouTube videos, sees Americans living in Thailand or Portugal or Mexico, and they think, great, I'll just go there and figure it out. They assume they can live on tourist visas forever, bouncing in and out every few months. Or they think retirement visas are automatic if you're American and have some Social Security income. Wrong on both counts. First, the tourist visa shuffle. Yes, some people do it. They enter a country on a 90-day tourist visa, leave before it expires, come back, repeat. And for some people, in some countries, it works for a while. But here's what they don't tell you in those expat Facebook groups. Immigration officers notice patterns. They see you coming back every 3 months with no real ties to your home country, and they start asking questions. Are you working illegally? Are you really a tourist? And one day, you get turned away at the border. Or you get a stamp in your passport that says you're banned from re-entry for 6 months, a year, sometimes longer. Now you're 68 years old, all your stuff is in an apartment you're locked out of, and you're scrambling to figure out where to go next. That's not retirement, that's chaos. Second mistake, not budgeting for legal help or residency costs. A lot of broke retirees think, I can't afford a lawyer, I'll just handle it myself. And look, I get it, money is tight, but the cost of getting your residency wrong is way higher than the cost of getting it right. Immigration lawyers or visa specialists in most countries charge anywhere from $500 to $2,000 to help you navigate the process. That might sound like a lot, but compare that to the cost of being deported, losing your deposit on an apartment, having to buy last-minute flights, and starting over somewhere else. The math is not close. Real consequences here. Fines, forced exits, and stress in your 60s and 70s that you do not need. I've talked to retirees who thought they were fine, only to get hit with a $3,000 fine for overstaying or working without authorization. Others who had to leave a country they'd grown to love because they never bothered to get the right visa and immigration cracked down. So here's your actionable advice. Before you move anywhere, research the retirement visa or long stay visa requirements for that country. Not what some guy in a Facebook group says. Go to the official government immigration website, read it. If you don't understand it, pay someone who does. And budget for at least one consultation with an immigration lawyer or visa specialist. Even if you end up doing the paperwork yourself, that consultation will tell you what you're actually dealing with. Do not assume. Do not wing it. The first trap is thinking the rules don't apply to you, and the rules always apply. Number 2, healthcare fantasy. Trap number 2, the healthcare fantasy. And this is a big one because healthcare is one of the main reasons broke Americans even consider leaving in the first place. You hear that healthcare is cheap abroad, and it is compared to the US, but cheap does not mean safe, and cheap does not mean you're covered for everything. Let me break down the problems. First, pre-existing conditions and private insurance costs. A lot of countries with great public healthcare systems like Spain or Portugal don't let you in to the public system right away. You might need private insurance for the first year or two, or even longer. And if you're 65, 70, 75 years old with high blood pressure, diabetes, or a heart condition, private insurance abroad is not cheap. You're looking at $200, $300, sometimes $500 a month depending on the country and your health. That eats into your Social Security fast. Second problem, underestimating the cost of serious medical events. Yes, a doctor's visit in Mexico might be $30. Yes, dental work in Thailand might be a fraction of what it costs in the US. But what about cancer treatment? What about a major surgery? What about a long hospital stay? Those costs add up, even in countries with lower prices. And if you don't have insurance that covers it, or if the local public system won't take you because you're not a citizen or permanent resident yet, you could be looking at tens of thousands of dollars out of pocket. If you're broke to begin with, that's game over. Third problem, and this one is serious, not planning for medical evacuation. Let's say you're living in a small town in rural Ecuador. You have a stroke. The local clinic can stabilize you, but they can't provide the level of care you need. You need to get to Quito or back to the US. Medical evacuation by air ambulance can cost $25,000 to $100,000 depending on where you are and where you're going. If you don't have insurance that covers that, you or your family are stuck with the bill. Or worse, you don't get the care you need at all. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying this because I've seen it happen. I've talked to families who had to crowdfund to get their parent back to the US for treatment. I've talked to retirees who are stuck in countries they want to leave because they can't afford the medical care they need, and they can't afford to go home either. Here's your actionable advice. Research public versus private healthcare in any country you're considering. Find out, can you access the public system? How long does it take? What does it cover? If you need private insurance, get real quotes based on your actual age and health conditions. Don't guess. Set a minimum standard. Know your monthly healthcare budget and have a worst-case scenario plan. What happens if you get really sick? What happens if you need to go home? If you can't answer those questions, you're not ready to move. Trap number 3 is cost of living creep. And this one is silent, but deadly. You move overseas because the cost of living is low. You're excited, you're budgeting, you're shopping at local markets, eating local food, living like the locals. And then, slowly, almost without noticing, you start spending more. Here's how it happens. At first, you're buying tomatoes and chicken at the local market for $1 or $2. But then, you miss peanut butter. You miss cereal. You miss things that taste like home. So you start going to the Expat grocery store where they stock imported American brands. That jar of peanut butter that costs $3 in the US, it's $9 here. That box of cereal, $7. You tell yourself it's just once in a while, but once in a while becomes once a week and your grocery bill doubles. Or you start going out to eat more. The local Commodore where you can get a full meal for $3 is fine, but you meet other expats and they want to go to the nice restaurant with air conditioning and English menus where a meal costs $15 or $20. You go once, then twice, then it becomes your weekly routine. Or you move into an expat district because it feels safer, more familiar, everyone speaks English. But the rent in the expat district is double what locals pay because landlords know foreigners will pay it. Suddenly, your $400 apartment becomes $800 and you're right back where you started. This is cost of living creep. You move for a low cost of living, but you didn't actually commit to living that way. And before you know it, you're broke again. Except now, you're broke in a foreign country. Here's your actionable advice. Before you move, pick a target budget. Let's say $1,200 to $1,500 a month, all in. Rent, food, utilities, transportation, everything. Then build a sample month on paper. Research what things actually cost. Talk to expats who are already there. Ask them what they spend. Be realistic. And here's the hard part. Decide in advance what you will not spend on regularly. Imported groceries, eating out at expat restaurants, living in the expat neighborhood. Pick your limits before you move, because once you're there, it's too easy to justify every little upgrade. If you can't live on your budget eating local food and shopping at local markets, you can't afford to retire there. It's that simple. Don't move somewhere cheap and then live like you're still in the US. That's not a plan. That's a disaster waiting to happen. Trap number 4, currency and inflation shock. This one catches people who think they've done all the math, but they forgot that the math changes. Here's the problem. You're living on dollars. Your social security check comes in dollars, but you're spending in pesos or baht or euros or whatever the local currency is. And the exchange rate fluctuates. When the dollar is strong, you're doing great. Your $1,500 a month goes further, but when the dollar weakens, suddenly that same $1,500 buys you less. Your rent, your food, your utilities, everything gets more expensive overnight, and you didn't do anything wrong. The currency just moved. On top of that, you've got local inflation. Let's say you move to a country where inflation is running at 8% or 10% a year. Your rent might be locked in for a year, but after that, it goes up. Your groceries get more expensive, your utilities go up, and your social security. It gets a cost of living adjustment, sure, but it's based on US inflation, not the inflation in the country where you're actually living. So you're getting a 3% raise while your costs are going up 10%. You're losing ground every year. A lot of retirees make the mistake of overconfidence. They think, the dollar is strong right now, so I'm fine. But currencies move, economies change. The country you move to could have a financial crisis, a political upheaval, runaway inflation, and when that happens, your fixed income in dollars doesn't protect you as much as you think. Here's your actionable advice. Before you commit to any country, watch inflation trends. Look at the last 5 years. Is inflation stable or is it volatile? Is the currency stable against the dollar or does it swing wildly? You can find this information with a simple Google search. Inflation rate, country name, or USD to local currency exchange and rate history. And here's the smart move. Keep some money in a US account as a buffer. Don't convert every dollar you have into local currency and dump it in a local bank. Move money month by month. That way, if the exchange rate moves in your favor, great. If it moves against you, you're not locked in at a bad rate for your entire savings. Currency and inflation shock is the trap that makes you feel like you're doing everything right until suddenly you're not. Protect yourself by staying aware and staying flexible. Trap number 5 is isolation and mental health, and this is the one that nobody talks about enough. Being lonely overseas can be more dangerous than being broke. I mean that. You move to a beautiful country with low cost of living, great weather, friendly people, everything looks good on paper, but you don't speak the language, you don't know anyone, you're far from family, far from old friends. And after the excitement of the move wears off, reality sets in. You're alone. Here's what happens. You try to meet people, but it's hard. The locals are polite, but you can't really communicate. You join expat Facebook groups, you go to meetups, but the people you meet are transient. They're there for 6 months, and then they're gone. Or they're younger digital nomads who don't have much in common with you. Or they're heavy drinkers because that's the social culture in a lot of expat communities, and you don't want to spend every evening at a bar. You start spending more time alone. You watch TV, you scroll Facebook, you video call family back home, but it's not the same. The time zone difference makes it hard to stay connected. Your grandkids are growing up and you're missing it. Your friends back home stop calling as much because you're not around. And slowly, the isolation eats at you. Depression, anxiety, these things are real. And when you're depressed and isolated in a foreign country, it's even harder to get help. Therapy might not be available in your language. Medication might be different. And if you don't have a support system, a bad day can turn into a bad week, a bad month, and before you know it, you're in a dark place with no one to pull you out. Here's your actionable advice. Before you move, verify that there are communities where you're going. Are there expat meetups? Are there clubs, hobby groups, faith communities in your language? Are there other retirees, or is it all 25-year-old backpackers? Be honest with yourself. Are you the kind of person who makes friends easily? Are you okay with being far from family and old friends? Because if you're not, no amount of money saved is worth being miserable and alone. And if you do move, prioritize building a social network from day one. Join things. Show up. Make an effort. Because isolation kills, and I'm not being dramatic. Study after study shows that loneliness in older adults is as dangerous as smoking or obesity. It increases your risk of heart disease, stroke, dementia, early death. This is not a small thing. Don't trap yourself in isolation just to save money. It's not worth it. Trap number 6, trust and relationship scams. When you're lonely and vulnerable in a foreign country, bad people see opportunity. And I wish I didn't have to say this, but I've seen it happen too many times to ignore it. Here's the scenario. You're a broke American retiree living overseas, you're isolated, you're lonely, you want connection, and someone pays attention to you. Maybe it's a romantic interest. Maybe it's a local who's friendly and helpful and makes you feel welcome. You're grateful. You let your guard down. And that's when things start to go wrong. Romance scams are the most common. You meet someone, they're charming, they make you feel alive again. Things move fast. They talk about the future, about building a life together, and then the asks start. They need money for a family emergency. They need help with rent. They have a business opportunity that just needs a little capital to get started. You want to help. You want to believe. So you send money. And you keep sending money. And by the time you realize what's happening, you've lost thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. I've talked to retirees who sent their entire savings to someone they met online or in person, someone that they thought loved them, only to find out the person was scamming multiple foreigners at the same time. It's devastating financially, but it's even more devastating emotionally. But it's not just romance scams. It's also business scams. Someone approaches you with an opportunity. They want to start a restaurant, a guest house, a bar. They just need an investor. You think, I could make some extra money. This could be great. You put in $10,000, $20,000, and then the business fails. Or it turns out there was no business, or your name was never on anything legal, and your money is just gone. Here's your actionable advice, and it's a hard rule. No joint bank accounts and no big money moves in the first year. I don't care how much you trust someone. I don't care how real it feels. 1 year minimum before you combine finances or invest in anything together. Keep your assets in your home country bank account. Move money monthly for your living expenses, not in big chunks. That way, if something goes wrong, if you get scammed, if you need to leave quickly, your savings are still accessible and safe. And look, I know this sounds cynical. I know it feels terrible to approach new relationships with suspicion. But the reality is that some people target vulnerable foreigners, and broke retirees are especially vulnerable. Protect yourself first. Real relationships can wait. Real business opportunities can be verified. If someone is rushing you, or pressuring you, or making you feel like you have to decide now, that's a red flag. Walk away. Trust has to be earned, especially when you're far from home with limited resources. Don't give it away too easily. Trap number 7, no exit plan. And this is the one that ties everything together. No exit plan. A lot of broke retirees move overseas with no backup plan if things don't work out. And that's a recipe for disaster. Here's what happens. You move. Maybe things are great for a while, but then your health collapses, or the visa laws change and you can't renew your residency, or you have a family emergency back home and you need to get back to the US right away. Or the country you're in becomes unstable, there's political unrest, crime gets worse, and you don't feel safe anymore. If you planned for this, if you have savings and options, okay, you can handle it. But if you moved with no emergency fund, if you spent everything you had just to get there and get set up, you're stuck. You can't afford to leave, but you can't afford to stay either. You're trapped. I've talked to retirees in this exact situation. They're living somewhere they hate or somewhere that's no longer safe, and they're stuck because they don't have the money to get out. They can't afford a flight back to the US. They can't afford to break their lease. They can't afford to start over. So they just endure day after day, miserable and scared because they have no other option. Here's your actionable advice. Before you move, aim for a small emergency fund, even $3,000 to $5,000. I know that's hard when you're broke, but it's essential. That fund is not for fun. It's not for upgrades, it's for emergencies. It's your exit plan. And write down a plan B. Literally, write it down. Where would you go if you had to leave the country you moved to? Would you go back to the US? To a different country? Do you have family or friends who could take you in temporarily? How quickly can you liquidate your stuff and get out? What's the fastest, cheapest way to get back if you need to? You don't want to think about this. I get it. You're focused on the dream, on making it work. But hope is not a plan. And if you don't have an exit plan, you're gambling with your life and your future. Don't move without a backup. The trap is thinking you'll never need it, and then finding out you do when it's too late. Okay, I know that was a lot. 7 traps, a lot of warnings, a lot of worst case scenarios. And I want to be really clear, None of these traps mean you shouldn't leave America. They mean you shouldn't leave blindly. Plenty of people on modest social security incomes have made this work. I know retirees living in Mexico, Portugal, Thailand, Ecuador, Colombia, and other countries who are thriving. They're living better than they ever could in the US. They're happy, they're healthy, they have community, they have purpose, and they did it by respecting these risks, by planning ahead, by being smart and careful and realistic. You can do this. But you have to go in with your eyes open. You have to do the research, you have to plan for the worst while hoping for the best. You have to take these traps seriously because they're real, and they've destroyed retirees who thought they were invincible. The difference between success and disaster is preparation. That's it. So, prepare. If you're still serious about escaping, don't stop here. I made a video on 5 countries that are actually realistic for American retirees on small budgets. Not fantasy, not hype, real numbers, real pros and cons. And if you're not even sure, you'll be able to retire at all. If you're worried that Social Security won't be enough, I break down why most Americans are headed for poverty in retirement and what you can still do about it in this video over here. Watch those next so you're not just scared, you're informed. So you have a real plan, not just a dream. I'll see you over there.